have a design firm in Halifax called Brink. If you are from here or maybe in Toronto, or if there are some of you that are all the way out west from Calgary, maybe Vancouver, you would likely be familiar with one of our spaces. We work a great deal in hospitality, in retail, and over the last few years, we've really been building a bigger portfolio in the wellness space. We create human-centric designs through our work with architecture, interior design, and branding. But today, I want to actually share a story about my mother and how an experience I had with her changed the way that I design and the way that we approach work at Brink. I was at summer break during my studies in architecture, and I was finishing up some summer job that I had, and my sister was trying to get to me to pick me up. I was in a farm field, so I was exposed to the warm sun for the first while I was waiting for her. But the gray clouds came in quickly, and before I knew it, I was sitting in the rain, completely soaked. When my sister finally arrived, she was bawling her eyes out. She was completely upset. She was upset because my mother was just home from a set of treatments from cancer, in her cancer treatment. And she was stuck outside on the deck in her wheelchair. So worried, of course, that in her discomfort, immobilized outside on her back deck, she might stumble on her way to get inside or maybe hurt herself more. We flew home as fast as we could. When we got home, luckily she was sitting in the wheelchair, but unfortunately completely soaked. When I walked up to her to help her out of the chair and bring her inside, she just said, "No, leave me." So I left her. I thought in her Dutch stubbornness, I don't know if anybody here knows any Dutch people, I being one of them, we are particularly stubborn, and I thought this was just some passive-aggressive way to kind of make me and my sister feel terrible for letting her sit out in the rain. When I was inside, I could see her through the window from the kitchen, and she was smiling. She had the biggest smile on her face. She was looking side to side and just taking in everything in front of her. She finally waved at me to come pick her up, and I walked over and helped her out of her wheelchair, and she was completely drenched. And she said, "I cannot believe how much I love the rain." I brought her inside, and we sat down, and I went back outside days later and was looking at the deck, and as an architecture student, I just saw this deck as just a basic piece of wood, and the room outside is just a general space. And then I realized that all those years that I've been studying architecture, there's been so much effort and attention spent on the aesthetics of things. The personal taste that one great architect had or designer had, and your personal view on what you would see a space and how that should be. But what I saw actually deeply changed the way I approach design. I saw my mother as the user that experienced something quite profound in this space that actually could be designed. It wasn't about the little details or the space that made it valuable, but if we can think ahead of time to who was using a space and how we create it, we could create something quite beautiful. The output of a positive experience is the beauty that I could see. And I felt like I had a bit of a superpower. So my mother unfortunately passed away just before I finished my started my final year in my thesis. I decided to take this learning and see if I could apply it to a cancer treatment center. The spaces that I spent there, as many in this room would know, are driven by the medical systems that are in place to keep people healthy or keep people from dying. And there was an ability for me to rethink it and take it from the point of view of my mother, and maybe in the bland spaces of a medical center that has so much trauma and so much challenge, that maybe there is a way that we could create something beautiful that was about the experience. In an effort to really dig into as many stories and connect with as many people as possible, I sent out hundreds of questionnaires and surveys. I spoke with a lot of the doctors and nurses that I met along the 3 years that my mother was fighting against cancer. And I heard a lot of different stories that were actually pretty interesting. I heard some woman say that the guidelines on the floor that would direct her to the room that she had to be in made her feel like cattle. People said they felt like an object. The spaces were so loud they couldn't hear. They would have no privacy. The lighting in the ceiling would hurt their eyes. There were days that they wouldn't know what time it was because they were blurred in their vision, so they couldn't even see the clock. Some would say they felt trapped. And the hardest one for me to hear was one woman said, "I don't want to die in this room." So I came to a few simple conclusions. I tried to take all of those lessons and those things that I heard and flip them. So natural light is your best clock. Sights to the real landscape can calm almost every patient. A hospital is not a home. Making it feel cozy
is just a way to disorient a client.
Or a customer, sorry. You can never have too much privacy, and caregivers can never have too much space. And I was surprised by the reaction I was getting by some of the doctors and nurses and patients that I was engaging them in this kind of conversation because they haven't engaged them before in the development of their spaces with that patient point of view. This is an outpatient room, solid walls, as most would have, heavy door,
but
swings with light push, so you feel that acoustical privacy. When you walk into the space, it is a simple, almost bland medical room. The ceiling is completely glass, and outside you can see a single tree. The idea is that when you're facing a doctor while you're sitting on the table, you would see the doctor's face, maybe receiving difficult news. You're trapped, like my mother on that deck. You have nowhere to go, and you're receiving some of the worst news possible. Or maybe you're lucky and you hear something positive. But above you, as you look through the roof, you see a single tree hovering over your doctor's head. A reminder of the balance between nature and medicine. Another voice to hear, in a way. We've carried all of this kind of way of thinking with a user-centric mentality to all the work that we do now. We never make assumptions of our clients, of our users. We're research-based to try to take in as much of a perspective as possible. And we're emotively driven. We look to create an experience that, if beautiful in the end, creates the beauty itself. I feel like I've come full circle over the 27 years. Currently, we're designing a space for Shannex. It's a large building. For those who don't know, Shannex works primarily with seniors in long care living. And we're diving deep into the questionnaires, of course, but we also had the opportunity to go to Toronto and immerse ourselves into a series of experiences that helped us understand what it might feel like to be a senior. So in a very short period of time, I became a 65-year-old man, which actually is not that far away, which is frightening. And I was in this story, somebody had suffered from a massive heart attack. Vision goggles blurred my sight, earplugs, I couldn't hear very well, 2 layers of rubber gloves, I had weights on my ankles, and what I was doing when I was walking wasn't acting like I really felt that way. And I felt how hard it must be for some people to be in a position where they are completely out of control of their bodies. And I thought of my mom in that time on the deck and how magical it must have felt to feel the rain. So in the work we do with Shannex now, we are thinking about the experiences that we can create. Yes, we spend some time picking out colors and all that kind of stuff, but the priority is first, what is it that we want people to experience? And can it be powerful enough that people will choose to live there for the last remainder of their lives and hopefully have a room that they would feel justifies their death? Thank you.